Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Warm welcome to everybody for today's webinar. I'm Karuna Krishna Malesh, Director of Membership and Market Development at the Open Group, and welcome all again for today's webinar on why the energy sector should leverage the OSDU Data Platform, which is being hosted by the Open Group. And I'll be the host for today's session. And I thank you for all taking time to join us as we explore the transformative role of the Open Group OSDU Forum, its mission, and how it is redefining the upstream data landscape in the energy sector. The Open Group OSDU Forum, led by our forum members, is a collaborative initiative uniting industry leaders to create and implement an open, vendor-neutral, and standard-based framework tailored for the energy sector. In today's webinar, we will showcase how this innovative data platform is tailored for the energy sector and how this platform fosters data management, accelerates digital transformation, and enables organizations to harness new opportunities within the energy ecosystem. This session is designed with a broad spectrum of participants in mind, whether you are an oil and gas operator or a technology provider or a stakeholder in the region. You will gain actionable insights into how the Open Group OSDU Forum operates and how it can support your organization in overcoming the challenges of digital transformation. Here is a quick view on the aspects that we'll cover as part of the agenda. First, we will provide introduction of the OSDU Forum and its pivotal role in fostering collaboration across the energy sector, essentially the OSDU Forum's Business 101. Then we will dive into the technical aspects of the OSDU data platform, explore how it forms the backbone of data-driven decision-making. Following that, we will hear from Shell, showcasing how they are leveraging the OSDU data platform to deploy workflows and manage data in the real-world scenarios. Finally, we will conclude with an interactive Q&A session where you will have the opportunity to ask questions and engage with the panelists. A few housekeeping points before we begin. This session is being recorded, so the recording will be shared with you after the webinar. You're welcome to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A panel. So if you see on your screen on the bottom right, there are 3 dots next to the chat icon. When you click on it, you will have a Q&A window that will pop up. So I request you to pose your questions in that window only. We will address all of these during the dedicated Q&A segment at the end. We also do encourage an active participation, so feel free to share your thoughts, insights in the chat box throughout the session. With that, let's begin. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker for today's webinar, Tim Hunter-Rowe from BP. Tim has over 3 decades of experience in data management. He has worked across industries such as the oil and gas, mining, and national planning. And since 2011, he has served as a principal data manager at BP, overseeing data and knowledge platforms, including the OSDU delivery. In the OSDU Forum, Tim co-chairs the Capability Portfolio Group and contributes to event planning, admin UI, and business model groups. He's also part of the original OSDU Management Committee for 3 years. Without further ado, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Tim Hunter-Rowe, who will kick off today's session. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Karuna. Okay, well, thanks for the great introduction. Yeah, my name's Tim Hunter-Rowe. I work for BP. I'm a principal data manager there. I've been for BP for around 12 to 13 years. And I've been working on the OSDU since 2018, so pretty much since the beginning. This presentation is the Business 101, the non-technical section. These are very basic, so they're sort of ground floor, entry-level introduction to OSDU. And we do one of these sessions at each of the conferences, and I usually present this the day before the actual conference starts to help people who are newer to OSDU get up to speed. We normally take around 30 or 40 minutes to get to this. So for the purposes of this webinar, I've slimmed down the deck a little and we'll move along quite briskly. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is why are we doing the OSDU? What's the trigger that's caused all of these companies to come together to form the OSDU? What are we actually delivering? How's OSDU set up? And finally, what's the value that we're hoping to deliver through the OSDU? First, we're going to start with some real basics. As I mentioned earlier, I've been working on OSDU for a number of years now, and within BP had a lot of conversations about OSDU. The first thing I normally get asked is, what does OSDU stand for? So we'll clear that one up first. OSDU originally stood for Open Subsurface Data Universe. When it's originally started, the initiative focused, as the name suggests, on subsurface data. However, the scope quickly expanded beyond that into things like wells and production, engineering, renewables, CCS, and so on and so on. And at the time, there was quite a lot of conversation about what to do with the name. Should we call it Open Energy Data Universe or something of that nature? Anyway, it was decided at the time that the OSDU brand was already out there, so we'd stick with OSDU. But you shouldn't see it written out in a longer form anymore. OSDU is just OSDU. So what is it? So the OSDU is a consortium of companies in the energy industry that have come together to form a forum. There are over 200 companies involved now. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact figure. I think when we put these slides together, it was about 218, so you may see that, but I don't know what the current figure is. Anyway, we'll go with over 200 companies involved that are addressing some of the technology challenges and the opportunities that we have in the industry. We're managed under the broader umbrella of the Open Group that have organised this webinar, and we can talk a bit more about that later on. So why did all of these companies come together to form the OSDU? The energy industry, as we're probably all aware, is going through a big transition right now. We're transitioning to meet the energy trilemma of secure, sustainable and affordable energy. We're going through a big digital transformation right now as we move more and more of our technology estate into the cloud to take advantage of agile work practices and new innovations in technology. However, we've got some challenges. The energy industry is old. It's been around for decades and decades, and over those years, we've acquired a huge amount of data, seismic data, well log data. We send fluids and gas to labs for analysis and so on and so on. And over the decades, the traditional approach to this data has been to convert it into a proprietary data format, put it into a proprietary data store so that it can be read by a specific application. And what we've essentially done is create a data silo that's very application-centric. This works okay within the silo, within the vertical stack, that works fine. The challenges come when we want to move outside of that silo, and they're in two main areas. Firstly is the sharing of data. No company is an island in the energy industry. We share data with survey companies, processing houses. We share data between operators in JVs, national oil companies, regulators, so on and so on. Energistics is another organisation which is a member of the Open Group, and they have a saying that goes something like, data flows through our industry like currency flows through an economy. So we need to make that flow as frictionless as possible, and data silos don't help. Secondly is a sharing or interoperability of that data within a specific organisation. We want to be able to take advantage of new technologies that come along. We want to be able to use best-in-class tools for analysis and interpretation, things of that nature. It's very difficult when our data is locked within a silo of proprietary formats and a proprietary data store. Very often, we end up duplicating the silos of data for specific purposes, which gives us a very high data management complexity. So we've talked about the application-centric view. What do we need to become data-driven? I mentioned we've got a lot of data stored in proprietary formats. The challenge is that we want to be able to combine this data to build insight so that we can make business decisions. We've got the Lego metaphor at the bottom of this slide here. Obviously, we can't stack our blocks to build insight if there are different types. The way we tackle that right now is we build extract, transform and load pipelines, ETLs. We use expensive middleware and we hire teams of data managers to manage the data estate. What often happens is that we have lots and lots of copies of the same data in different formats, and this causes a lot of issues with tracking data quality. How do we track lineage? How can we trust the data we're using is the right one? This can be managed, and we've been running for a long while pretty successfully, but it's very expensive and ultimately can impact the ability to make quality business decisions in a timely manner. So what we want to do in OSDU is to start standardizing our approach. How do we define a common language so that we can communicate more easily? How do we provide opportunities to have more standardized data to enable things like storage, search, retrieval, and consumption? Can we standardize the APIs that we use so that applications can communicate more easily with our data? When everybody's speaking the same language, the whole data environment becomes much more manageable. And why do we want to do this? Well, we want to free the data from the silos that we've created so that we can use whichever applications we wish to interrogate and analyze the data. We need a platform which is technology agnostic, that we can deploy on whichever cloud service provider or on-premise that we want to. We want to be able to unlock some of the new technologies and innovations, such as AI, that are coming through. And it's going to be difficult to do this when our data is in a silo. We want to be able to stack our Lego blocks to build insight and to make better business decisions faster. And finally, the flow of data through the industry will be much more frictionless if we speak a common language and therefore have less translation to do. So, our vision is to be data-driven. We want to store data in a standardized platform on the cloud in an open source manner. We want applications to be OSDU certified so that we can adopt more of a plug and play approach. And we can be certain that whatever apps we want will be able to access our data. And ultimately, and this is sort of the whole point here, data management is low value work. I'm a data manager, so I'm allowed to say that. Data management is low value work. There's not a lot of competitive advantage in the way that we manage our data. The IP and competitive advantage, the value, is how we interpret and analyze that data to make decisions. So how do we spend less time doing the former and more time doing the latter? So, quick bit of history. As I mentioned, I've been working on OSDU since about 2018, and at that time, Shell rang up BP. They rang up the other operators you see here. By the way, these logos are a selection of the 200 that we've got. Don't take these as definitive in any particular way or exhaustive. We obviously couldn't fit 200 on the side. Anyway, Shell rang up BP and Exxon and Chevron and others, and they had a conversation that went something like this. Shell shoots seismic, collects wellbore data. We send cores off to labs to get scanned, exactly the same way BP does. We're all collecting the same data. We're managing it in the same way. We're using the same software, and there's no IP there. There's no competitive advantage, no value. So why are we competing in what is essentially a non-compete space? How about we all get together and we design a platform in an open source environment so that we can all share our knowledge and share the effort? We can spend less time, as I mentioned earlier, on the low value work and more time on the high value work. However, the operators knew they couldn't do this in isolation and were going to need help from the rest of the industry. So this brought together some of these other organizations. We sort of broadly separate them into these categories. Excuse me. We need an environment on which to deploy whichever technology we design and build. So we bring in the cloud service providers. We need software, remember, to plug and play with our data platform. So the software vendors need to be involved so they're aware of how this is working and can contribute towards that end. We need talent and expertise to deploy and run these systems, these environments that we're putting together. So we need systems integrators. And then finally on there, we need academia. We need them for a couple of reasons. One, the next generation of talent's coming through the university pipeline. And secondly, they drive a lot of the innovation. How good would it be if our university research teams had access to an open source data platform they can use with data in it that's freely accessible? And we're going to do this under an open source model. I mentioned the Open Group earlier. So the Open Group provide a number of things. They don't just organize webinars. They also provide the environment in which we work as a forum. We communicate directly through a packed meeting schedule. There's around 50 to 60 meetings a week, every week, maybe not the next couple of weeks, but in a normal part of the year, 50 to 60 meetings a week. We also communicate asynchronously through Slack. They organize 2 conferences a year, one in Houston and one in Europe. The next one, which is in May 2025, is in Amsterdam. We use GitLab as a code repository. And they also provide the legal framework under which we operate to make sure that we don't run foul of any antitrust legislation. So basically, they provide the environment in which the OSDU Forum, made up of over 200 companies, is working together to define this common language we talked about earlier, to move us away from an application-centric environment and into a standardized, data-driven era. So when somebody asks, what is the OSDU Forum actually doing? We're developing an open source, standards-based, technology-agnostic data platform. So what does open source mean in this context? Again, a conversation I've had a few times. One thing it's not, one thing it's not doing, we're not deploying a single instance of OSDU into the cloud with all of the operators then putting all of their data in that same instance and providing access to everybody. Okay, we're not doing that. I've had that one a few times. The OSDU Data Platform will be deployed behind your own firewall. Have all the appropriate security policies applied so that your data is held safely and securely. What it is are these 200 odd companies coming together to collaborate and to use agile software development to release early and often under the Apache 2.0 license. In OSDU, we have major and minor releases. We call the major releases releases, and we call the minor releases milestones. We're currently on, I think, release 3, milestone 24. There's a lot of activity underway now to move us to our next major release. We use planets to name our major releases, so we're currently on Mercury. We're on the flight paths to Venus, which you'll hear a lot about in the forum right now. We're developing this platform in such a way that we can deploy it on any cloud we want to, or on premise if we wish to do so. In fact, there's a session at the last conference in Houston a few weeks back that demonstrated how you can install the OSDU Data Platform on your laptop, which is quite cool. The current guise of OSDU Data Platform is what we would normally refer to as a system of record. So this is where we manage our gold data, our trusted store, if you like, the source of truth. And the original design was based on that premise. However, there's a lot of work going on right now to establish system of engagement capability. So within a project team, if you wanted to store temporary data, you wanted to share data between project members to work on, we could do that through a system of engagement type approach. There's a working group called Project and Workflow Services looking at how we do this. The other thing we're doing is defining a number of standards. The first OSDU technical standard was released earlier this year. That details the technical aspects of the platform. We're also developing a number of data standards. This is how we talk to each other, our common language. And data standards include the data format and also the metadata, which is used to describe the data. This enables us to ingest, catalog, find, and share our data more easily. Many of these have already been developed. By and large, the data definitions team that do this work try to use existing industry standards rather than developing new ones from scratch. So how does the OSDU Forum work? I've mentioned a few times, started in 2018. There's over 200 companies, we'll say, it says 218 there, whatever it is, over 200. Made up of around 30 operators, but by far the biggest group are the technology organizations, so service integrators, software companies. They take up almost 200 of the places, just under 200 of the places. I mentioned also that we try to work with existing standards organizations rather than defining our own. You can see at the bottom there, Ingestion, IOGP, PPDM, there's others, but these are some of the organizations we've got agreements with. And this is a diagram of how the actual OSDU organization works. I mentioned Open Group at the top there in green, so they set out the operating framework for us all. Then each member company has one or two focal points, and the focal points represent their company's interests and are there to vote on things, really. So some positions, for instance, OMC are voted upon. Major or significant changes in things like terms of reference, that kind of thing may go out to the focal points to vote on. The OMC represents the board, if you like. The OMC positions are elected, as Karuna mentioned. I sat in the OMC for the first 3 years. It currently consists of 11 members. The OMC is a board of 11. 5 of those members are from operators, 3 from software vendors, and 3 from cloud service providers. But by far and away, the two biggest groups on the bottom left and bottom right. If you cast your mind back to the slide that said, what is the OSDU Forum actually doing? We said it's a data platform and standards. The PMC, the Project Management Committee, You can think of that as the group that's developing the data platform. PMC is largely made up of software engineering and other technical roles of that type. There's many groups, subgroups that I won't go into here, specializing on different areas of the platform development. The group on the right-hand side is involved more in the standards. The data definitions group, you can see there again, by far the biggest split into different data domains. Capability portfolio, which is one that I'm happy to co-chair, is a working group that's ensuring that the OSDU delivers output that satisfies the requirements of the business. We don't really have time to get into it on this presentation, but there's some really good material there about how the OSDU represents the energy industry to ensure that it remains aligned to business requirements. Finally, if you use the QR code there, it will take you onto the OSDU website with a really nice interactive version of this diagram. Okay, to wrap up then, the message here is that the OSDU train has left the station. It's real. This isn't an academic exercise. It's out there. You can download it, install it, and you can load data into it. BP is, Exxon is, Shell is, Chevron is, others are. The train has left the station. The good news is that it's not too late to get on board, and I do realise the safety implications of that metaphor. Don't jump on a moving train, but let's move on. It's not too late to get involved, and there's huge opportunities here. We're breaking down silos that have been established over decades and decades of an application-centric way of managing our data. We're developing standards to drive interoperability by creating a common language. We're developing an open source data platform to reduce the time we need to spend on low value work. And I think the most exciting area is here over on the right hand side. The whole purpose here is to drive innovation. How do we leverage this technology that's coming through the market right now? How do we make best use of our cloud environment? How do we make use of things like AI? There's a huge change to the way we're working as an industry. The OSDU is going to be a significant part of powering that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much for the insightful information about the OSDU Forum, and also emphasizing that how, as an industry, it's so crucial to standardize data, especially to bring in the innovation and transformation that the industry has been aiming for. And given that as the oil and gas energy is going to peak, it's the data, it's what's going to make a lot of money for the companies. So thank you so much for that. Up next, we have our second speaker, who's Debasis Chatterjee. Great. So Debasis Chatterjee is the Director of Research and Analyst with the Katalyst Data Management. Debasis has a degree in electronic engineering from the IIT and has over 4 decades of experience in IT and data management within the oil and gas sector, having worked with Tata Group, Schlumberger, Nova Consulting, and Katalyst. Currently, he's based at Katalyst Houston office. Since 2018, he has been involved with the OSDU initiative, serving as a vice chair of the PMC for over 2 years and continuing to serving several work groups within the forum, and also collaborating with industry experts across companies. Debasis, welcome. The stage is yours.
All right. Good day, everyone. Thank you to those who are joining in odd hours. And looking at the participant list, I think I know some of you have worked in the OSDU Forum with you. My name is Debasis Chatterjee. Karuna already introduced that I work for Katalyst Data Management. And moving on, we'll be talking about the technical part. So it's part 2 of 3. And again, I won't go in details. Karuna mentioned some of that. The last part I want to mention again, I'm proud to restate that I've been working in the OSDU Forum with a group of people, and I'm rewarding experience for me. I've worked with brains from many different companies, so that's what you will gain if you intend to join the OSDU Forum in an active role. Okay. In today's agenda, we are going to talk about the data platform at a glance. We'll try to give you a brief exposure to what it is. And the ingestion process, because that's a common question, what people want to know. Different modes of operation, Tim touched upon that briefly, system of record and others, and pointers to where you can find information, right? So we'll start with the data platform at a glance. And this has been my attempt to capture the very complex data platform in one page. I made an attempt, and we'll walk you through. So don't worry about looking at the whole picture. Let's look at it one at a time. I want to start at the bottom left where I'm saying data definition. Again, my earlier speaker mentioned that it's a foundation, it's the backbone, it's the data model and the implementation. Okay, and it's backed by reference values, quality rules. Again, it was mentioned earlier that OSDU Forum is not working alone. It's working with many other standard bodies such as PPDM, Energistics, IOGP, and few others. Okay, so that's where it starts. People work together to build the best of the best data model. Different companies bring their own, and then they brainstorm for days and weeks, and then we come up with the best model for seismic or well or whatever, rock and fluid, right? The next part is we have to realize that data model somewhere. And OSDU Forum, the technology group, they looked at many options. They settled with NoSQL for the first landing spot. And the generic name, we say document store, because the different CSPs may pick different technology. Could be DynamoDB, could be MongoDB, whatever. But generic name is document store. Then the second landing point of the data, when it gets recorded, model realized and data populated, goes into Elasticsearch, which is, again, the generic name is index store. And very often, these two are kind of catalog records. So summary information about the wellbore or the seismic acquisition. But side by side, we may have the bulk data in cloud. So for example, for the well log, I may have the LAS file. For the wellbore trajectory, I may have a CSV file. For a seismic report, I may have a PDF file. So all of that is landing in the cloud most of the time. But as Tim mentioned earlier, we can have on-prem implementation as well. So again, speaking about the ingestion, what happens is, there is a storage service, which is the fundamental way to create the record in the OSDU Data Platform. But there are some higher end, such as manifest-based ingestion, CSV ingestion from comma-separated files, with XML parser, if you happen to have your data in XML, and more are coming, RescueML parser and other things are coming also. Okay, so one advantage in the manifest-based ingestion, it brings in some other goodies like checking your schema, doing the referential integrity and all of that. So you have a choice, and we'll talk more about that later on. Then I would say we talked about data definition as a foundation backbone, and this is another one. So it's not often when you get a data model from a standard industry standard or organization, you can probably get the model, but you don't often get the APIs along with it. In case of OSDU Forum, you not only get a rich data model covering many domains and the general areas, the generic parts, you also get what we call core services, storage, used to, as I mentioned earlier, create a record or to retrieve a record. Search, more efficient way of retrieving record. It's Elasticsearch. It's using the Apache Lucene syntax. Lots of flexibility there. Legal, entitlement, so many others. You got the helper service, so units, conversion, coordinate catalog, whatever else. And here I put in a different color. So I'm saying this is not offered by the forum. This is applications built by operators or vendors or whoever else is trying to utilize the data, could be writing. It's a read-write, of course. In different modes, you will do different things. But this is to be built, so this is in the compute space, right? Moving on, I want to take you to the middle portion of this slide. So where we got domain-specific, DDMSs, their data management system for domain. We started with wellbore and seismic came on, as you can expect. Why? These two are fairly common. Rock and fluid sample together. So because there's a lot of synergy between rock sample, fluid sample, so this combined. So that's another DDMS. Well delivery, reservoir, production DDMS in the works now. Star means in the works. Side by side, I'm showing, I talked about bulk data in the cloud like a LAS file, but in the domain data management, you now have the option of putting your data in an optimized content. This is the raw content. Now this is the optimized content. In case of wellbore, they selected Apache Perk as the technology. So they extract the curve data or the wellbore trajectory data and push it in here in Apache Perk. In case of seismic, the decision was to put in OpenVDS or OpenZGY. And in case of rock and fluid, they've gone back to Apache Perk. In case of reservoir DDMS, they're using RescueML. Okay, so once we do that, once we put our data in the optimized content, you now have the added advantage. I was showing application by vendor is leveraging the core APIs. That's fundamental. They have to do that. In addition, now you have the luxury. If the data has been put here, you can now utilize the Wellbore DDMS or seismic DDMS, Blue Air library, Schlumberger SLB library, all of that you can utilize. Okay. The next part in this slide is, we'll touch upon some, we'll not touch upon all of them, is the consumption zone. So on the right-hand side, this is read-only. In the center, we are talking about read-write. Domain data management system, definitely dealing with read-write. This is consumption, and probably one of the good suitable example is geospatial consumption zone. If your data is heavy with the spatial geometry, if you're dealing with seismic trace and live trace outline, not really a simple four-corner point, lots of corner points, lots of spatial data, then Elasticsearch, theoretically it's possible, but you probably want to use something better. So the geospatial consumption zone gives you that advantage. Okay. Yeah, we'll come to the questions later on. I'm finding some questions appearing in the chat, but we'll just move on for the benefit of time. So I want to show you, I'll probably take you out quickly to the website, because it's one of the best websites I've seen for browsing data definition, right? Maybe I want to do that right now. I kept a few pages open for you all. So this is the starting point, and I call it, book of knowledge 1 of 2, I would say. For the OSDU, the data definition is 1 of 2, and I will show you the other one for core service. So here you can browse nicely from this ER, going to master and work product component, whatnot. I opened up Wellbore, which is a common one. So down to the Wellbore, the very common thing people do, either they go to this link, which is a synthetic data. It's very useful, or there are worked examples which are more enriched. Synthetic data gives you a flavor of what the JSON payload will look like. JSON is the way of working with the NoSQL database. So here, I find it extremely useful. We can look at it from here too, from the data definition, this particular page, but having a page JSON payload properly populated is more useful. Okay, so I'll go back here to this page. So I want to show you now. This is in the OSDU Forum site, osduforum.org. And if you go down to the data definition page, I think this particular view is extremely useful. It shows you domain by domain. Interactively, you can click on completion, you can click on geophysics, and it will tell you what are the schemas managed by geophysics. What are the schemas geophysics domain utilize from others, such as common things, location, organization, all of that. So I'll encourage you to, visit that site, take a look, extremely useful, okay? And here is just a random example I brought up. So I was talking about the data definition browser page, one of the very rich browsing site I've come across. And it also gives you, synthetic data model, right, built automatically. But in some cases, this is probably, it's outdated now. The rock sample has evolved a little more. It's gone to sample because of the unification with rock and fluid. But it gives you a flavor. So in some cases, you will have the luxury of getting also a nice data model diagram such as this one, okay? And I want to spend a little bit of time here for the concept side, because as you start to work with OSDU data definition, you start to hear about the group type, the master data, reference data, all this terminology will come to you. So it's better to get familiar. So on top, I put in blue color, the reference data. These are like your lookup. These are your drop down. These are your enumeration, okay? And when I'm dealing with master data, this is more the static kind of data, the Wellbore organization. But when I come to the well log, the different color is the work product component. So this is all activities happening on the Wellbore. So well log is one of them, and Wellbore trajectory could be another one, and many more. For the Wellbore, linked to Wellbore, I may have many things happening. They're all in the WPC work product component category. Okay. The final one in this tree diagram is the data set type of record. That's also quite important, because in the picture I showed you with the well log record, I will have a connection to a LAS file. So this is achieving that link. From the well log work product component, the catalog, it's connecting you to the actual LAS file. Okay. Then I talked about, I said 2 books of knowledge. The book of knowledge, one is data definition, and this is the code service. So in picture, we showed a picture before. So data platform core code. This is the generic APIs like the search and storage. And I was saying if the DDMS is implemented, you go to the domain APIs, and applications can leverage both, depending on what we have, right? And again, a few links. And I want to show you, I'll take you out. Sorry for taking you back and forth a little bit, but I'm very tempted to show you this particular page, which is our book of knowledge 2 of 2. It's a code service page, gives you a simple diagram, and gives you a link to all the API documentation. Extremely good documentation. If you want to know about Elasticsearch, spatial search and all that, you can click on the link and you can find out. But another one, if you're a programmer, background, you probably want to come to Swagger API, which is again extremely well documented. For each and every API call, you have, this is a sample body. So if I'm trying to create a record using storage service, it's a put command. I will come here to get the details about, come to the Swagger API, get the details, so that's extremely useful. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse of that. And I'll take you back. Are we doing okay on the time? Probably. Yeah. So here is the catalog content. I was mentioning that on the catalog record well log, it'll have the summary, it'll have connection to the last, the raw content, and it'll have the optimized content if you have decided to put your data in Wellbore DDMS. So that's the picture you can keep in your mind, high level. Again, all these things I don't have time to show you live, but you will have access to the deck and you can use those pointers. Ingestion process, high level, you have the manifest or CSV or WITSML. End of the day, it'll boil down to the storage service put to create the record. I mentioned about indexer, which is duplicating the record from NoSQL to Elasticsearch. And in the process, it does a lot of good things. It does what is called the normalizer. You will hear the term frame of reference on normalizer. It takes care of unit conversion, the feet and meter, the common problem you have internationally, the time, time zone, different time zone in the world, of course, the coordinate system, right? And here the bulk data can be sitting here. Once a record is sitting in this space, you can use storage service to retrieve your record. You can also use search service to retrieve the record, okay? And this picture, again, to give you an idea what is out of scope and what is in scope. So OSDU Data Platform is giving you the framework. Data Platform, all different ingestion framework. But the real work from the actual legacy data, you have the work to do for the data preparation. That is left to the vendor or the operator. Okay. So quickly, some frequently asked question, how do I get to an OSDU instance? I would say if you want your own private instance, work with the cloud provider of choice. Various cloud provider will give you a pass model, so you can just rent it, pay as you use kind of thing. And you can try your own deployment using your own IT development, DevOps resources. And Tim mentioned earlier that in the last face-to-face, there was a session how to deploy OSDU instance on a laptop. The laptop, will have to be a little bit not so slim, but that's okay. It's possible theoretically. And the last one I said, if you come and get involved in active OSDU development or some work group, that will give you access to a live OSDU instance. The second one, who does the development? And I want to give the analogy to United Nations Peacekeeping Force. We all do it together, okay? Another analogy is Dutch party. And I mentioned iftar party thinking that people from Middle East would join. Usually in the Ramadan month when people are fasting, when they break fast end of the day, different families get together with different dishes and they have a hearty meal together. So it's almost like that. We are all working together to build a best solution, like Tim mentioned earlier, the vendor neutral, version neutral, cloud neutral solution. And the PMC development team has developed resources from many, many companies. It's extremely rewarding experience. And if you look at the calendar, they have 4 meetings per week. And SLB Shell made the initial contribution and now getting more and more contribution by different other companies. Reservoir DDMS, I'm just showing few examples, has been donated by, contributed by Aspentech, Rock and Fluid by ExxonMobil, Coordinate System Services Enhancement by Shell, and there are many more examples where people are contributing, right? And the last one, for me, the frequently asked question, there are more things happening in the Q&A. What is in it for me? If you're an operator, I just want to give another simple analogy is you want to really open up and full freedom to choose product from any vendor and even mix and match. So washer dryer, you don't really think of, I have to use Samsung washer and Samsung dryer. No, you can use a different washer and you can even have a mix. You can even have washer from one company and dryer from another company. Okay. NDR, National Data Repository, OSDU Forum is building up infrastructure for both types of input. Regulator side, where they want to hold data from multiple companies, also data submission, which is a common need. So when people are working in a different country, they have to submit data to the government regulator. Vendor, working in common compete space, working with integration. Either way, tight integration, loose integration, whatever it is, it's fine. Either way, as long as you claim that your product works with the OSDU data platform, then you are more open for selling that. Service companies help the operators in their uptake of the OSDU data platform. And in general, I would say stop reinventing the wheel on your own. Come and build the new future. If it's a gap now, let's fill up the gap. And together we'll make the best, and that will be part of the platform, right? And the key capabilities, briefly, I want to touch upon, because you hear these terms, system of record here, where people are storing data from multiple domains all in one place. System of engagement, team briefly talked about that, where like the project workspace is happening in this space, where you will have the active work. Insight is more like consumption zone, where you're taking the data for analytics and all of that, maybe the AI, ML. Right, so 3 modes of operation. Keep that in mind for your thought. And little more I've said, system of record. Yes, we have to build the loader. We have to build the discovery tool. And keep in mind, use the external data service if suitable for your work, like trying to get the data from external source, maybe TGS, maybe IHS. System of integration, engagement, loose or tight. Check the PWS work group. System of insight, you look at GCZ. There was some work done by Power BI Spotfire to drag the data out of OSDU data platform and helping you doing the analytics on that. This is another one I want to very quickly mention. There is a group called interoperability, where very proudly I can mention that different vendors, operators are working together all to throw data in one platform and work from it. So Halliburton writes something, Aspentech picks it up, writes back a derived data, and DGI, another company, brings it up and tries to use it. So all that is happening. So active group, work group, okay? Other items of interest, keep in mining. The new thing, mining has happened, is SIG mining, special interest group. Blockchain for energy is happening, carbon capture. Team mentioned briefly, real-time data, sensors, fiber optics, all of that. People are working actively to build some solutions. And that's where I want to end. Let's see if I kept the time, or am I over?
Yes, you are right on time.
Okay. Good.
Thank you very much. This was a quite insightful technical overview of the data platform, and you definitely did guide us through the capabilities and the impact of the data ecosystem. And you have very beautifully used the analogy to encourage all of us here to be part of the forum, that wonderful work that's going on. And I want to reiterate that all the work that goes into the forum is vendor neutral, technology agnostic, and it's open for anybody out there to come and contribute. So feel free to join the forum, right? With that, we move on to the final segment of today's program. Let me just introduce our next speakers. Okay. So we will hear from Shell today how the global adoption deployment of the OSDU platform is being done as of today. And we have with us Keith Minton. Keith is a production geologist by background and has spent over 30 years delivering oil and gas developments around the world. And with the last 5 years focusing on transformational and data-driven digitization program. He is the General Manager, Subsurface Data Integration, OSDU Business Opportunity Manager with Shell. Joining him, we have Nancy van der Voort. She's a seasoned digital leader with over 2 decades of experience in delivering digitization solutions for the oil and gas industry. For the past 5 years, she has served as the OSDU Program Manager at Shell, where she delivered the majority of the OSDU program for Shell Global. Keith and Nancy, a warm welcome, and the floor is yours.
So thanks for the introduction, and as the slides come up, indeed, my background is very much kind of petroleum engineering, so I've worked around the world in fields and assets, delivering kind of production and production enhancement. So I come to this program very much with that business background, and I'm joined by Nancy, who comes much more with an IT background. Nancy, do you want to just say a word of introduction?
Yeah, thank you very much, and big welcome to all of you. Indeed, decades of an IT background all round, all from software engineering to testing to business analyst and up to program management and leadership as well. So thank you for having us and looking forward to this session. Over to you, Keith.
Thank you. Yeah, my lawyers advised me I have to flash this slide up. You'll be happy to know I'm not going to spend too long on it. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Karuna. Just to outline a little bit about what we'd like to share with you today. We've been on quite a journey within Shell developing and deploying the OSDU Data Platform. I'll cover a little bit of our vision. So I'll go back to the beginning of our program. I think it will dovetail quite nicely with what Tim was describing in the beginning. And I'll talk through what we hope to achieve and what we hope to deliver by deploying it globally. I'll then show you a little bit about the status of deployment within Shell and how we're ingesting the data, how we're filling up the platform with data. And then I'll hand over to Nancy, who will take you through the last three topics around the first workflow that we're deploying for petrophysical analysis. And then she'll talk a little bit about how we're connecting applications in a production environment, and also how we've dealt with those countries that have strict data export restrictions. So with that, if you could go to the first slide. Indeed, this is a slide that just summarizes the vision that we have in Shell. And I find it interesting that this is a slide that hasn't changed in about 5 years. You can read the text of the vision at the top of the slide. It's very much around getting more value out of the data that we have, and then bringing people together around that data to power innovation. Now, the starting point that we have in Shell is one that is probably familiar to many operators, but I think it's particularly severe in Shell. We have a very fragmented and scattered data landscape. We have a number of third-party data hosting applications. They're on-premise and they're replicated in multiple locations around the world. In some cases, we have 10, 15, even 20 instances of the same database, hosting different data, but in many cases hosting the same data and trying to replicate each other and stay in alignment. Now, many of these have been in place for decades, some of them up to 20, 30 years old. And of course, in all that period that they've been used, they've started to drift apart. And it means that our data is hosted slightly differently in the different locations where we operate. Now, one challenge that we have with the existing data landscape is that it can't really cope very well with the sheer volume of data that we're throwing at it. We're delivering and capturing and recording more and more data as every year goes by. And we find our staff are spending so much time to, first of all, find the data and then get it into a format where we can start to do the clever things that the kind of new way of working enables. So think about artificial intelligence, think about machine learning. We want our staff to be really focused on building AI models, building machine learning models and getting the insights out of those. We don't want them to be spending so much time just finding the data and then getting it into a format where those models can then be built. Now, because our program is looking at our entire subsurface and wells data set that we currently have in corporate data stores, we're supporting all of our subsurface and wells end users. So we have thousands of end users spread across the globe. We're also looking to cover primarily the oil and gas business today, but much of that data has great value as we go forward in the energy transition in things such as geothermal energy, in particular CCS and CCUS. And potentially even things like hydrogen storage. So we believe this is a foundational platform that can survive and can deliver value for many, many years to come. We believe that, if you just hold on to that side a little bit longer, we believe that the key thing that this will do for us is to make better and faster decisions. Everything in our company is geared towards quality decision making. And indeed, getting the data that we need and understanding how reliable it is, how trustworthy it is, and then being able to make a decision on that is where we think we can extract the most value. You've heard Debasis talk a little bit about the three systems, the system of record, insights, and engagement. We really feel strongly that bringing people together to do their work around the data and allowing the data to flow through our projects and our decisions is a way to really improve what we do and how we deliver our business. And it does cover end to end from basin evaluation, the early stage of frontier exploration, all the way through field development, managing field performance, and then ultimately through to field abandonment. Next slide, please. Now, where are we today with the program that we've been running for a number of years? So firstly, if I draw your attention to the image on the right-hand side of your screen, and at the bottom of that is a representation of that data landscape, that siloed data landscape that I was talking about. The little grey database icons highlight the fact that we have our data stored primarily in discipline-specific databases. And this could be an image of one country's data with multiple silos covering all the different disciplines. You see some schematic lines that are drawn behind the databases. That just indicates the fact that many of these replicate the same master data within each one. So if you take an example of a well header, many of these databases rely on well headers, and we try to keep them all synchronized with copy-paste functions and pipelines. But as I said, over the decades, these have not always been successful, and sometimes the data has drifted apart. So we're going through a major effort to clean that all up. And then in the middle of the plot, you see the little yellow arrows. So we're developing hundreds of ETL pipelines, extract, translate, and load, to take that data from our on-premise data stores, translate it into the industry format, so the OSDU data formats, and then put it into the OSDU in the cloud. Now, at the top of this little picture, you see an image of the cloud. We're currently working with AWS, so Amazon Web Services. They host our OSDU instances, and we currently have, well, the image shows three. We've got three regional instances, one in the Americas, one in Europe, and one in Asia Pacific. And as Nancy will mention later, we have one that's in an in-country location as well. On the right-hand side of the diagram, you see that we have a whole suite of applications on-premise that today mostly read the data from our corporate stores, but also in some cases write it back. And in the future, we want to migrate as many of those to the cloud as possible, but also accept that a number will remain on-premise and we'll need some sort of a translator to be able to read and write data into the OSDU platform. We've focused our data migration efforts on our what we call our core countries. So those are our really important assets around the globe. I think we have 10 of those. We're currently well advanced in making a copy of that data into the OSDU. We've ingested over 1 million records. That number is going up week by week as these pipelines start to pump data into the OSDU. And what we hope to do is to bring that data to the hands of the end user in a really simple and easy way. So we want people to be able to interact with the data, be able to find it, and then start to do the clever things with it that our engineers are desperate to do. So building those models, analyzing the data, creating subsurface realizations, creating production forecasts, and thereby accelerating and improving the decision-making that we take on our fields and our assets. And I think with that, I will hand over to you, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. So Keith just explained the system of record, system of engagement, and the system of insights. This is another lens, and this really zooms in on one of the workflows that we have started to do. Before we could focus on the petrophysical workflow, we also had to make sure that the data management workflow and the visualization workflow is up and running. Without that, you basically can't even see your data, and you can also not manage it. So once you have the two basic workflows in place, Shell has chosen to start with the petrophysical workflow in order to start connecting the system of record, system of engagement, and the system of insights all together. At the bottom of this slide, you may recall the legacy environment from Shell at the moment. And as you can see, there's quite some data already needed in order to support the petrophysical workflow. So the first step is that we have translated the data into the OSDU industry standard. And that all is based on the OSDU platform as supported by Amazon as well. On top of it, that's where you see the entire suite from to support the petrophysical analysis. So we have a visualization tool, IVAP. We also need to manage the data, so we've got a data management tool. Currently, maybe it will change, so hence the reason to be determined. And then on top of it, we have TechLog software supporting it. What is important to realize is that at the moment you copy the data, you put a tag of entitlements and obligations to it. What does it mean? As operators, we have quite a few data sharing agreements in place that allow us to share the data or not share the data. Shell's premise is to share the data everywhere and anywhere, unless entitlements and obligation does not allow you to. So with the first copy, we liberate the data and the data is visible at the various instances that we are having. If you start to do your analysis and new data comes in, it is important that you put your entitlements and obligation tag to it in order to either allow everybody to see it or to limit it the access, and of course as widely as you can. So these are the type of questions that we as an industry are tackling together. And that's important to realize at the moment that you start working on a program like this. Shell at the right-hand side is still having OpenWorks as our project environment. At the moment, the project workflow services is still under execution. It's still being developed within the forum. So once that is ready, Shell will adopt it. At the meantime, we still put OpenWorks in the equation in order to continue to do the interpretation and the modeling of the various other apps as well. But this is a nice vertical overview of one of the workflows, and Shell is having a multitude of these workflows already either in the development or full stop in implementation already within the assets. The next slides will tell you a bit more around the steps that we continuously taken. We've taken on various scenarios, and over the last 4 years, these 5 steps in this order is really help us to move away from our legacy data entirely up to the system of record, system of engagement, and system of insights. By copying the data first and by identifying the interfaces and the dependencies of the impacted workflow, you've got your analysis in place. And that really makes part of your roadmap, and it really starts the puzzle as such. Step 2 tells you all about the data mapping and the data liberation and the migration. By copying the data, you do not impact the workflows as such. I think it's a safe area to quickly allow you to already visualize the data and to prepare a major step for the mastership change, for the workflow change. At the same time, we do step 3 and we build various interfaces that can either be via the APIs or via virtualization or via Databricks or a combination of. Shell recognize 2 languages. It either the applications speak the OSDU language as such, OSDU native, or it can speak to the OSDU system of record, and that's where we say it's compliant. So there's somewhere a translator in between. Hence the 2 differentiations. So you need to be aware what the application as such can tolerate. We also have built many automatic end-to-end test cases, and we test full stop, almost 24/7. That really keeps the workflows in place, and we really identify very early on potential issues such that there is no disruptions within the workflows and for our end users within the assets. And then last but not least, we fully deploy via CI/CD pipeline, and then the new workflows is in place. These 5 steps really helps us to move into a safe workflow deployment schema. The next slide will tell you a little bit more around, so what if you've got data export regulations? Qatar is a good example for that. For Qatar, Shell is using an in-country solution from IBM together with Amazon, and that means that the data is really in-country. We're using bare metal services and OpenShift in order to have an in-country solution that also means that the application as such needs to be installed, in this case within Qatar. Entitlements and obligations will really, again, helps you with the country regulations. So what can be shared, what cannot be shared. All the policies are being translated. So the good news is that you invest once, but you can replicate it many times. And you really know for sure that you keep yourself safe from a country regulations point of view. For some countries, we have some temporary waivers in place. That means that they can really make use of some of our regional setup. But maybe later on, we need to move into an in-country solution there as well. So to close it out, it was quite a journey. Not everything was going right at the first end, of course. One of the examples that I can give away was lift and shift. At the moment, you take in a complex environment like Shell was having, with many applications connected, and you do lift and shift of one of the applications and leave the rest on promise. That will come with some of the surprises that you could not foresee at the beginning. So we've taken a different leap and a different vision around lift and shift. So only when it is localized and contained, you can do lift and shift. But if you do lift and shift in a very complex environment, you will come with some unforeseen challenges, and you really need to decide if you would like to move with that, or if you would like to change your journey there. It was a journey. It was a great journey, and I think absolutely something to be proud of. And I'm absolutely sure that this is really going to help not only Shell, but also the rest of the industry. So thank you very much for your attention, and open for Q&A.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Nancy, for really sharing your story and how the OSDU Data Platform is enabling Shell's data management and driving its digital transformation. So thank you once again with that. We have come to the end of the session. We will be opening for Q&A. We have a few questions already in the pipeline. What I'll do is probably I'll pick some of them, and then we can go one by one in answering those. I see that some have already been answered here. Okay. There's one question, probably I'll divert this to Dennis. Dennis, it says, is there a certification badge or accreditation on OSDU?
So that's a great question. Certification is a key factor in all of the forums of the Open Group, and especially OSDU. And what we're doing in the OSDU Forum is we're developing a certification policy which is based on the standard. The standard then will beget a verification matrix, and the verification matrix then will be used for verification and certification testing. That is in process. We have a certification group in the OSDU Forum. It's a working group. They are developing that criteria right now. And then the Open Group, as it does in the other forums, will be the legal entity to enforce it, but it's driven by the members. And all of the criteria is member-driven, documented, and then administered by the Open Group. So yes, it's in process, and we welcome you to, if you have an interest in that area, to join and contribute.
I have a follow-up question for that, for my own reference, I would say. By when can we expect that? Is that something planned for 2025?
I would say late 2025, 26. We have a standard that's going through the approval process right now, and as I said, that standard will be derived from the standard will be the verification matrix. So it's in process, 2025, 2026 time period. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We have a next question. Could you please also suggest the list of badges outside of the Open Group to get good domain skills on energy sector if someone is new to the energy sector? I probably would open it up to all the speakers here. Debashish, Kate, Nancy, Tim.
I can go first, Debasis here. So I was not clear about the badges, but there are different organizations, non-compete, I would say, organizations such as PPDM offering this kind of courses, and it's SPE, all different bodies offer such courses. And typically also additional courses are offered right at the time of their annual conference. Well, annual or more than annual, they have it in different places. So very often, just before 1 or 2 days before the actual conference, they have some courses such as for those who want to be familiar with geophysics domain, petrophysics domain. So I would encourage you all to look for that. Thank you.
Just to follow on to that, I'd also point the website that was posted earlier, the OSDU website, has some training courses embedded into it. So there's some training information and training courses already on our website that, as I said, you posted earlier.
Keith, Nancy, Tim, you've been in the industry for long. Anything from your end that you can suggest?
I would have given the same answer that Debasis gave, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
He speaks for all of us.
Right. We can take a few more questions, but I have one question I would like to ask. Now, you already, all three have you talked about how the OSDU Data Platform is enabling supporting the AI work and the machine learning. But I just wanted to understand how the forum is addressing the industry trends like the AI, machine learning, and advanced analytics. Is there a work group? Is there something specifically being done? I'll open it up for all the speakers here.
I mean, I'm no expert, but I guess what I see is that the OSDU Data Platform is the foundational element that has to be in place before you can hope to do advanced analytics on your data. And what we've seen in Shell is that if you don't have that foundation in place, then all the end users who, in particular, let's be honest, the younger staff that are very familiar with these tools, they have to go through the pain of accessing the data, normalizing the data, preparing the data, and only then can start doing the really value-adding work. So we see it as a kind of table stake. Let's get our data in the format that lowers the barrier of entry for AI and ML, and then let our staff kind of go wild once we've got that foundation in place.
Okay.
I can add to that, Karuna, a little bit. So again, several times in our face-to-face, we have been finding presentations by either vendors or vendor operator together, how they are leveraging the data from system of record kept in OSDU Data Platform and utilizing for AI ML. That's one aspect in the system of insight aspect. But even the ingestion side, we are hearing more and more how people are extracting structured data from unstructured data, such as a PDF, such as a well-logged scanned image. Those are common challenges, and multiple vendors, operators, they're trying to solve it together. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
I can add a little bit more on there, just as an extra little thing. There have been some good demos at the conferences. I think it was Houston last year. Equinor did a good demo of using interacting with the OSDU Data Platform using a large language model, which is quite interesting. So using natural language to interrogate your data foundation, I thought was a very good example. So that's a sort of a practical example of how AI is helping to improve the way that we manage our data for the reasons that Keith mentioned.
You see this going into the way of the data platform having another feather onto its cap by having a generative AI build on it, as that's the buzzword these days. Do you see that happening?
I would answer this question in two parts. So the first part is that with artificial intelligence or machine learning, that's also where you can gain a competitive advantage. So I can clearly see that the operators, and later on if you move into other industries as well, that's where there is some internal R&D being done in order to get insights or prediction models or whatever is needed. The second thing is that now we have established within the industry a common language, a common data model. That's where I really strongly invite software suppliers to come up with solutions that we all badly need. And that has always been the marketplace, and we need more of that. And how great it is that for a software supplier, you have a common language and you can really invest once and sell it multiple times. So I think this question is great, and it can be answered internally, but also via the marketplace.
So what I hear you say is that this could be added as a differentiator on top of the data platform for any system integrators or a solution provider out there. Okay. Yep. Thank you. We have a question from Pawan who says, how can system integrators contribute to accelerate OSDU adoption? Debasis?
Yeah, I can go with that. Yeah, no, great question. So I think that the way we see that happening is operators, large operators, they've got a job to do. You know, we saw from the Shell presentations, they've got to bring in data from multiple legacy systems into OSDU. And it's not an easy task. It's an ETL task. You know, in theory, it's a one-liner. But, you know, in the real details, there is a lot of work. So that's where I think operators would need some help. I wouldn't speak on behalf of them. But I think that's where we are finding more and more common engagement areas. So contractor companies are working to help the operators to accelerate, expedite the uptake of the OSDU data platform. Thank you.
Anybody like to add to that? Keith?
I think just to build on it, indeed, I think you could almost look at it as a skill. You know, deploying data into the OSDU is a skill that you learn. I know, as Nancy alluded to, we've really learned. You know, we've made some mistakes along the way, but we've learned and we've developed capability internally. You know, hopefully the system integrators are doing that for multiple clients, and they can really develop a mastery of this and then deliver that service to whoever wants to pick it up. So I think there's a great role that they can play in helping everybody that wants to onboard with the OSDU and do it as quickly and simply as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've sort of mentioned a few times in conversations like this is everybody is new to OSDU. We're all new. There is nobody you can go to with 20 years OSDU experience to say, what do you think? How should we do this? We're all sort of learning as we go, and I think in terms of system integrators, they have that sort of unique position of being able to share that knowledge because of the relationships they have with different organisations in the industry. So I think that's how I see them fitting, and they should, I would hope, be able to see sort of different trends across the whole industry, challenging areas, gaps, opportunities, that sort of thing, because they have that sort of broader horizontal view across all these different companies.
That's one of the gems of the OSDU Forum, of the Open Group, is the ability of all of the participants of the ecosystem to get an understanding from the other participants and insights from the other person's perspective. So the suppliers, the integrators get sitting across the table from the operators, get their perspective. The operators get the perspective and information from the integrators and the other suppliers of what is the art of the possible. The operators may ask and want this type of capability. The suppliers come by and say, that's great, but you're asking us to divide by zero. That just can't be done. And they explain why. And so there's a great interaction. And that's what happens in the OSDU Forum, and all of the forums of the Open Group, is that bilateral interaction, ultimately leading to the development of the platform. And technology-wise, and a good example, you mentioned AI a few minutes ago, is blockchain for energy. That's an emerging technology that the OSDU Data Platform has formed a special interest group and is very active on how to enable blockchain technology into the data platform. I would use the same analogy for AI as we go forward.
I have a question here. Is there any formal training opportunities available for the application developers, or as an application developer, what process should anyone follow to propose or make changes to the source code?
Can I start? Okay, so in the OSDUforum.org, I think Dennis mentioned earlier that there are some application developer training, different modules actually. So it's a build up, you know, module 1, 2, 3, 4. Earlier, way in the early days of OSDU Forum, there used to be organized training, paid training by some vendor company. And sorry for that. Sorry for that interruption. Yeah, I was talking about early days, there was organized training, and maybe that will resume. And there is actually a group discussing about what is the content of such a training module. Again, if you look at the OSDU Forum's aggregated calendar, you will find that session and encourage you to join that to provide your inputs and requirements. Thank you.
Okay. We can take one or two more questions. We have time. If anybody wants to have any questions here, we can address them. Let me ask my question then. To Shell, probably, what's been the biggest challenge that shell phase while deploying OSDU platform? Has there been any challenges, if there were?
Should we both take that one, Nancy? Because we probably have slightly different perspectives. But maybe I'll start, and it comes back to that legacy data position that we have. We've spent so much time and energy and effort in trying to keep our data, high quality and organized and standardized across the world. But you operate in different locations for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and you find that it drifts apart. And no matter how much training you give, no matter how many standards and processes you ask people to follow, our engineers are very inventive, and they face all sorts of different problems, and so they find different ways of solving those. And that sometimes comes with a different way of storing data in different places to enable their work. So getting through that, I probably have to call it a bit of a mess, and standardizing that once and for all has probably been the biggest challenge that we've faced, at least from the kind of business perspective. But Nancy, maybe you have a...
Yeah, let me answer it from a program management perspective. So I've got decades of experience in successfully leading digital programs. This one was absolutely unique. What made it unique was that the business and the data and the IT all needs to come together. And you can't deploy if none of those three areas are not together for certain parts at a certain time. So as a program manager, you really need to think differently than you used to do. And there's also a bit of R&D in that, innovation. So we have executed this under Agile at Scale. Agile at Scale is very well designed already for the execution phase, but not so much from the deployment phase. So we really also had to think it through, and we got our learnings there as well. How do you do your deployment and Agile at Scale at a very large program, and at the same time, no disruption on existing workflows? So that was I think it was a great challenge, but it took a few whiteboard sessions to summarize it.
That's great. And I hope
Maybe I should just add one little thing on my comment. Of course, the harder the data preparation phase is, the more value you get at the end, because it means you're coming from a different starting point. So yes, we recognize we've had a really tough job on our hands, but that also means we get to reap a lot of value from the standardization that OSDU offers us.
Okay. I believe there's one more question we have from the participants. Okay, could you please also suggest a little, okay, this has already been answered. I think we've answered all the questions. So I suppose at some point in time, OSDU Forum along with Shell will come up with a best practice document in terms of what are the do's and don'ts when you go about deploying. I think that could be also useful. And if it's already done, then it's wonderful. I believe that could also make it easier for the others to look at how well they can go ahead and deploy it. Dipti, did I miss any questions from the Q&A? I don't see any.
There's one question which I'm not sure I understand it, but it says interested in recording or / guide of OSDU data platform set up in local mentioned earlier. So I'm not clear with the question, but if the panelist has understood the question, please help me.
I think that the question is about this. We talked about deploy on a laptop or on-premise kind of thing. And I think Tim mentioned earlier, this was in the last face-to-face forum event in Houston. Dennis, I think those recordings are only private to members, so I would let you comment on that, please.
We have those recordings as part of the record, the proceedings, and they are available on our website. That is on the final slide of the presentation today. Also, I'm going to put into the chat box a member services email so that if you're interested in joining the OSDU Forum, you can utilize that email, send an inquiry into member services, and they will respond back to you. You can also go on the OSDU website under members, and it'll give you a tremendous amount of information about the membership in OSDU and the benefits of it.
Okay.
Karuna?
Yes, I think we've pretty much answered all the questions, and I think we are good to close. We're already 8 minutes past the scheduled time. All I want to say is, as we close, a very big thank you to all our speakers for sharing your insights and expertise. And I have to say that all of you have stuck to your time, and thank you for that. We hope that you found the session valuable and gained a deeper understanding on how the Open Group OSDU Forum and its data platform are transforming the energy industry, and from tackling the data silos to enabling seamless collaboration and driving innovation. The OSDU ecosystem continues to play a pivotal role in shaping this industry. And as we wrap up, here are a few key takeaways that I have gathered as part of the 3 presentations that we have had. That the Open Group OSDU Forum is fostering a collaborative, vendor-neutral, cloud-native approach to the data management and interoperability. The OSDU Data Platform is the industry enabler for a digital transformation, unlocking new efficiencies and opportunities. And there are real-world implementations, such as those shared by our Shell colleagues, demonstrating a tangible value and impact of adopting the platform. And I would like to remind you all that the recording of today's session, along with additional information and resources and the links mentioned, will be shared as well shortly. And if you have any questions or would like to explore how your organization can engage with the OSDU Forum, feel free to write to us. There are details of the website. You can reach out to us as well. And before we go, a big thank you to all our attendees for your time, attention, and engaging. Your participation makes sessions like this more impactful and for us to come back again and again. And we look forward to seeing you for future events and webinars of the Open Group. Wishing you all happy holidays and a lovely new year. And I would like to once again thank my speakers for being perfect and providing all the information that was needed. And it was insightful for me. So thank you very much. Thank you. Good night and good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.